In this presentation, we'll explore the early development of electronic music as a pop form, focusing particularly on the beginnings of house and techno in Chicago and Detroit. Ending our American popular music exploration with electronic music makes sense for two reasons. First, looking at electronic music allows us to summarize what we've encountered throughout the semester as we've listened to a history of American popular music. Second, electronic music and its various subgenres have continued to grow in popularity and influence, to such a degree that it's safe to say electronic music is not only our present, but also the future of music. Before we examine the beginnings of house and techno, it's important to acknowledge that electronic music is not a new topic for us. In essence, we've been studying electronic music from the very beginning of this course. Because our focus in this class has been on recorded music, we've been listening to electronic music all along. At the beginning of this course, I tried to convey the wondrous quality of the sound recording technologies of the late 1800s and early to mid 20th century. Recorded sound gave us the ability to preserve musical performance, making it available to people in all times and eventually all places. Because of recording technologies, music of all kinds today can go wherever you are. This was an amazing cultural change that had a democratizing influence on the world. By the early 20th century, anyone with a record player or radio in their home could gain access to cultural music expressions they'd never heard before, leading to the schizophrenia that we take for granted today. As we've listened to American popular music throughout this course, we've been traveling through time. We've been listening to change, dropping in on particular moments, high and low points of American societal shifts, like dropping a needle on a constantly revolving record. As we listened, certain patterns emerged, helping us tell a story about American values, fears, hopes, and dreams. We noticed the way commerce and an obsession with new frontiers drove musical and technological innovation. We heard repeating themes and saw familiar imagery, the cowboy as an expression of individuality and masculine heroism, nostalgia for home evident in country music and the intimate crooning of Tin Pan Alley tunes, rebellion embodied in sexually transgressive lyrics and political protest. On record, America, the young upstart nation, sounded like an adolescent discontent with the status quo, an obnoxious teenager striving for a new and better world, or just rebelling against the old one. Perhaps it could be said that this semester we played the role of DJ. We produced our own remix and called it American Popular Music. We made something out of the huge record collection, now digitized, that has been piling up for more than 100 years now. Of course, it's good to keep in mind that our remix is not the only possible remix. The narrative we've developed about American generations and their rebellious children has been our way of trying to make sense of who we are and how we got here. As Jeff Chang reminds us in Can't Stop, Won't Stop, A History of the Hip-Hop Generation, generations are fictions. The act of determining a group of people by placing a beginning and ending date around them is a way to impose a narrative. They are interesting and necessary fictions because they allow claims to be staked around ideas. But generations are fictions nonetheless, often created simply to suit the needs of demographers, journalists, futurists, and marketers. We could add college professors to that list. Just as marketers wish to put people into categories and groups to control profits, academic professionals try to corral the diverse changes in a society into movements, generations, or ideas to understand or grasp the ever-changing nature of time. One of my favorite musical examples of how we experience change happens to be one of the early influences on the electronic music we hear today. In 1965, Steve Reich, a young composer in the classical world, was exploring a technique called phasing. He took a recording of a street preacher, put it on repeat, and then played the same recorded loop over top of it. Because the playback was not precisely identical in tempo, the two tape loops gradually get out of sync, causing a delay effect. The result is that the incremental changes between the two tape loops create rhythmic and even melodic patterns that reveal the spoken phrase in a complex and ever-evolving musical experience. As you listen to Reich's It's Gonna Rain Part 1, notice how the subtle shifts continue to create new and unexpected patterns. Experiment with moving around in the piece. As you jump from one section of the piece to another, it's clear just how much the original phrase has changed. But as you listen to it from beginning to end, the shifts are more gradual. You should be listening in order to understand something about the process of music, not to be entertained. This isn't music made for top 40 radio. While listening to the piece, ask yourself the question, what does it mean to say something changes into something else? And what is happening in this music that I can point to as change? Were you able to come to a determination about change? I like to think that this musical experience of change is closer to what it's like to live moment to moment in gradual shifts of time. This everyday experience of gradual shifts in time is not at all like the grand shifts we have made in this class as we explored the social changes reflected in American music. It was easier for us to define social changes in American music because we took large leaps from one decade to the next. In reality, social change happens much more gradually, sometimes imperceptibly, until it suddenly bursts forth into our consciousness as an event that clearly reflects a new pattern emerging or that has already emerged. The way we detect these changes is by defining what one group of people was moving away from. In other words, we measure change against a perceived static moment that made the change possible. We try to stop time with theoretical ideas about what we have categorized as a particular moment in time that differs from the previous moment. This attempt to stop time in order to understand it could be compared to the way one might study the life of a tree by reading its tree rings. How much can we say we really understand about the life of a tree by reading a record of it after it has died? In a similar way, we may learn something about social change by thinking critically about music, but we have taken our object of study from its living context in order to do so. Studying American social change using this kind of theoretical process must be seen for what it is, a limited understanding of the true nature of the thing itself. Electronic musician Ronnie Size gets somewhat philosophical in the documentary Modulations: History of Electronic Music. It's never one thing. It's always something different. It's chaotic, it's calm, it's just forever changing. Though he's speaking of electronic music, the quote could refer to all music, to life itself. How could it be said that what we've done in this course could even come close to understanding such a thing? So with proper humility at the limits of our engagement, let's look at two more moments in the history of American popular music and social change, the rise of house and techno music. Watch the following clips explaining the social context for the emergence of these two influential subgenres of electronic music. Many people assume house and techno began in Europe because that's where these forms were more popular, but both actually began in American cities, Chicago and Detroit. Though the Disco Sucks movement gutted mainstream support for dance music in America, underground dance scenes continued throughout the 1980s. It could be said that the lack of mainstream attention and absence of pressure from the music industry to make hits gave early house and techno artists freedom to explore and be creative. Increasingly, artists wanted to explore and expand on the sonic palette of music, and electronic music offered a seemingly unlimited array of sounds to play around with. If you listen to the most popular music today, it's clear that electronic music in its many forms is the dominant musical form now and most likely into the future. Many of the top pop, hip hop, and even many rock producers are master implementers of electronic sounds and styles. It would be difficult to find many popular musicians who haven't benefited in some way from techniques developed in electronic music. As I've already suggested, the idea that human musical expression could be enhanced with electronic machines goes back to the beginning of the recorded music era. The idea can be found also in the developments of the electric guitar, microphone technology, auto-tune, etc. It seems quite clear that humans have embraced machines in musical ways. And this should not be surprising to us, since humans have integrated electronic technology into many aspects of day-to-day life. There's no evidence that society is slowing down in its embrace of electronic technology. So it is also safe to assume that electronic music will be a big part of American popular music in the future. Industrial rock artist Trent Reznor of the band Nine Inch Nails has a lyric in the song Every Day is Exactly the Same that reflects my approach to predicting the future. He sings, "I believe I can see the future, 'cause I repeat the same routine." This idea can be applied to our prognostication about what kind of American pop music we might see in the future. Based on what we've seen so far from the beginnings of recorded music, American popular music is the story of the increasing integration of electronic technology into the music-making process and listening experience, from capturing and amplifying the voice to using records and record players themselves as musical instruments, to making music out of pure electronic signals. Based on this history, it seems quite likely that we'll just get more of the same as time goes on. So what is the future of American popular music? The same as our past: increased mechanization of humans and attempts to humanize machines. Here are examples of robots in Japan playing musical instruments. We could also point to many American examples of robotic development, including the self-driving car, and even a few companies developing sex robots. But one of the most interesting examples in pop music of this future is the holographic pop star. Hologram technology has been used by British band The Gorillaz, and Tupac has also shown up on stage a few times, recently as a hologram ghost. My favorite example of the hologram pop star, though, is Hatsune Miku. Essentially, she's a singing synthesizer persona developed by Krypton Future Media. Here is Hatsune Miku performing in front of a large crowd of adoring fans. As you can see, Hatsune Miku has a big following. One of her American fans, explaining why she likes Hatsune Miku, says, "I like her a lot more than the other musicians nowadays because she's not a part of the latest gossip or addicted to drugs or having her 54th baby. But I'm sure that if she was a real person, she would. So I guess I like her more just because she's not real." I can understand this fan's point about liking a pop star for being unreal. This is why many stars are intriguing to us. But what's interesting is that with this technology, it's possible to invent something quite far-fetched and outlandish. Yet the goal with Hatsune seems to be to make the machine as human-like as possible, as real as possible, or at least real enough that people can identify with her as a human-like machine. As Marvin Gaye suggested in the documentary Marvin Gaye, What's Going On, as a singer, you have to give people something of themselves. If this is what appeals to the listener, the sense that the listener can identify with the singer and what's being sung, can see themselves in the song and in the singer, then we can understand why it's important to humanize the machines we want to express ourselves with. I want to end with a music video that captures the strange and beautiful marriage of humans and machines we've been tracing throughout this course. The singer Björk is known for merging electronica with her own Icelandic heritage. In this video, which has won numerous awards and even is on permanent exhibition at New York's Museum of Modern Art, two robots with Björk's face have an intimate encounter. Notice the way the beginning and end of the video show the network of cables that ties these two together. If the tangle of wires reminds you of tree roots, that would fit with the message of the song. Love ties everyone and everything together, permeates everyone and everything into one organic, living entity. Released in the late 1990s, this video effectively reflects the increased connectivity of the flowering internet age. If you are put off by the sexualizing of machines depicted in the video, you might remember that reactions to the sexuality of 1950s rock and roll revolution were similar. Perhaps someday we'll find romantic relationships with machines to be perfectly normal, though I think I've shown that we already have accepted this reality as a society to some extent. But Björk's music video is not sexual to be rebellious. Because both robots have Björk's face, we might interpret the video as an expression of our love affair with ourselves, or perhaps even our desire to find ourselves in our machines. Isn't this what we are doing when we try to express identity and connect with others through social media and other forms of technology? Aren't we just using technology to extend ourselves, like a singer's voice amplified to communicate with a mass audience? Though I believe Björk means to celebrate the power of human love even in a world of machines, one could also see the video as a creepy reminder that our expressions of love may just be manipulated by the mechanized processes we live in. The economic system in which we live rules our lives. It determines what kinds of jobs we can do to make a living, who we should or shouldn't join in marriage, what kind of music is worth making, etc. Are the robots in the video expressing love of their own free will, or are they just being manipulated by whoever's pulling the strings? All of these questions and more are raised by the video, which is one of the purposes of artistic expression, to help us see ourselves and the world around us in new and unfamiliar ways. My hope is that our exploration of American popular music this semester has contributed to a view of ourselves and our sense of connection to the social changes that influence our present reality.